What's up guys, welcome back to madmanmusic. In today's video we're going to be sanding the neck of this guitar. This guitar is a satin matte finish, so it's not glossy. And what's happened is over time when you play a guitar with this particular type of finish, wherever your hand or body tends to rub on the guitar will eventually sort of wear the paint away. And so it will make it shiny. It'll make it glossy. We don't really want that. What happens when it becomes glossy, especially on the back of the neck, is it becomes sticky. And that becomes really hard to play. What I want to do in this video today is show you how to sand this neck in order to bring it back to a matte satin finish so that it feels much better and allows you to play more comfortably. Just a forewarning, if you decide to do a similar mod to your guitar, there are a number of ways to do this. There is a number of opinions out there, which I'm sure everybody will share in the comments. But the one thing that I can absolutely tell you in order to not ruin your guitar is please go slow and be patient. All right, let's get into it. The first thing you're going to need is a little bit of masking tape. On my guitar, I don't necessarily need to mask so much off because I kind of actually want it to fade into the rest of the guitar. But if you have things like binding that you don't want sanded, or if you have a lacquered finished guitar that is glossy and you just want the neck to have this sort of satin finish so it feels a little bit better and you stick a lot less, then you may want to mask off hard sections of the neck so that it's just boom. The neck is sanded, but it's very obvious that the rest of the guitar isn't sanded. The next and most important thing you're going to need is some sandpaper. Now, there's a lot of people out there that will advise you to use things like Scotch-Brite pads or even steel wool. These things can work, but it really depends on what type of guitar you're using those materials on. For instance, a Scotch-Brite pad has a grittiness of about somewhere in the ballpark of like 400 grit. So it's equal to that of, say, 400 grit sandpaper. And if you have a guitar like mine, the first thing that's going to do is just rip into the clear coat that's on the guitar, and all you're going to see is white scratches. And they're not going to be uniform, and they're not going to look very nice. However, if you play a Fender guitar with like a maple neck that has a lacquered finish, but you still see the wood underneath, so it has sort of texture, visually it will look okay if you use one of these types of scouring pads on a neck like that. But on a guitar like this, it's gonna look terrible. Painted, solid color necks will not look good if you put a bunch of random scratches on it. So I highly do not recommend, for this case, using a Brillo pad or a Scotch-Brite pad or any kind of kitchen utensil. Once you've chosen some sandpaper, cut the pieces down into manageable sizes so they're a little bit easier to work with. Allow the paper to soak in soapy water to help reduce the surface tension. Wet the neck with a spray bottle, and then gently sand the neck using long, uniform strokes, trying to make sure that you completely cover the curvature of the neck. Along the way, if you need to, add some extra water just to make sure that there's enough lubricant in between the paper and the neck so that you don't scour the neck too much. After a few seconds of sanding, be sure to stop, dry the neck, and check your progress along the way. Once you see that the neck is evenly sanded, repeat the process with a higher grit sandpaper until you've achieved the finish you're going for. Finally, use a matte finish guitar cleaner and just clean up any remnants of any dust or residue left over from the soap so that you have a nice, dry, even finish. I recently did this on one of my LTDs because it was suffering from the same issue, and I wound up using all the way up to 7,000 grit sandpaper before it actually looked matte and satin in a uniform way that fit the rest of the guitar's aesthetic. Once again, there are many different methods of doing this, and it really will depend on what kind of finish your guitar already has. This process isn't terribly difficult, but it can ruin your guitar. So please be patient, take your time.